Welcome back, everybody. This is Making Speed, episode, as Tim just corrected me, 19. No Alexander, Charles Cruz. Today, we have on Dan Kahn with Kahn Media, who I will briefly introduce before we get going. Kahn Media is, we have worked with them at Classic Car Studio when we were doing the show. We needed someone to handle all of that automotive PR. They helped us with social media marketing. They did some creative work for us. And so we were able to take our show and our shop and really maximize the exposure we were already getting on TV. But the cool thing about Kahn Media is they know so many different people. They know so many different press outlets. So if you want to get your message out there and you work in the automotive industry, they are pretty amazing to work with. And so many of the companies that our listeners are constantly doing business with and buying parts through. I'll let Dan talk about some of those once we get going. Kahn Media, represents. So I think Kahn has been around for 12 years. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And we've been around for about the same amount of time. So as everybody knows, it takes a while to achieve some success. But that being said, success is something that Kahn Media has had. Just recently named one of the 500 fastest growing companies by who?
Inc. magazine.
Okay. And last but not least, certainly not least, Dan was the 2019 Person of the Year at SEMA.
In life.
In life. So he is winning like no one has ever. Dan was the 2019 SEMA Person of the Year. So which is still winning in life. Anyway, here's Dan. Hi Dan, how you doing? And thank you for coming on.
Good. Yeah, thank you guys for having me. This is cool. It's a nice little distraction at the end of a weird week.
Yeah, it's a weird week.
Strange.
I think it's been this industry is exciting and fast paced, as is our business, and time goes by so quickly. But this has been the slowest month of my life. It's very strange, and I think it's the amount of news that comes out, both good and bad and ugly, and
there's tons of research you have to do, right, to be able to be up on everything, to make good decisions, and it's day by day that it's changing. So it consumes a lot of your time. Yeah.
So I'm sure you've been kind of doing what we've been doing, is reading and researching and talking to your employees and kind of figuring out a temporary game plan.
Yeah, it's been interesting. I mean, like I was saying a little earlier, I started my business in November of 2008, right when everything was just cratering. So we kind of were born in a recession. I know how to run lean. Obviously, over the last 12 years, things grow, staff grows, overhead grows. So we did have to do a lot of hustle kind of when this all started to happen, to try and lean things out and figure out how to make sure everybody is okay working from home. But we're in the news business. So you had a slow week. We had a crazy week. We're a week when 16-hour days this whole week, just trying to keep up to everything.
Wow.
It's a good time to put content out there. Obviously, people are sitting at their houses. They're stir crazy
right now.
Yeah, the audience is there like we haven't really seen before. So you can see the people on our social media. Just there's a lot more people on there, a lot more likes, a lot more comments. So a lot of activity. So we've been happily throwing out as much stuff as we possibly could, because people are pent up. They want to go drive their cars. They want to go racing. They want to go back to work. They want to order parts. They want to do what they normally do. Yeah. So, we've got a kind of we've got our whole building locked down, and we're doing.
And luckily, cars are like an addiction, basically. So people will rebound fast, right? They're gonna come back strong and keep playing.
And it's interesting because we've been watching this thing really closely, and you're right. I think social usage is up like 26% in the last study I read. Mobile usage is up 50%.
Wow.
TV viewership is up. Obviously, just internet usage across the board is up.
Right.
So we had to do this weird thing where, especially because we run social for about 24 performance brands, and obviously you've got to be really respectful of what's happening, and people are getting sick and people are losing their lives. So you don't want to be glib. But at the same time, like, I assume you guys are probably like me, where I'm a car guy, and after a while, it's like enough. There's only so much of this horrible stuff I can read before I start to freak out.
Right.
So I need to get distracted. And if I can watch some guy with a pro mod car start it up in his driveway and shoot a bunch of revs and do a big burnout, awesome.
Right.
Like, great. I want the distraction. So we're walking that line is hard, but we're trying to give people a distraction too.
Yeah, and I think it's the right time for it too, because I feel like, at least for me, the first 3 weeks of this was just staring. First, I'm like, what's happening? What new laws are coming out? What's the deal with this bill? Then I'd stare and I watch the Dow, drop down, go up, drop. Everything's so volatile. But I hit a point kind of at the beginning of this week where I just stopped looking at it and I started looking at other stuff. So I think other people are there as well. So it's nice to be able to provide that outlet for people.
And for us in St. Louis, our weather is starting to get nice here. So it's 60, 70 degrees. We've got the doors open. I mean, that changes your whole outlook on things too. It was kind of rough there for a while, cold and rainy, and the world's crashing down, but it's a lot better this week.
You guys don't suffer from the seasonal issues we do, but people get bummed out in the winter, and you forget that it's a thing until it's been cloudy for 2 months, and people are bummed out. So as soon as it's nice outside, everybody's nice and chipper. So maybe we should move to California.
We have the weather, but I'll tell you what's kind of interesting is, a couple things. So they're being pretty aggressive. Luckily we're in Ventura County, so we're north of LA, but we still get kind of affected by whatever LA does because we're a smaller county. But they've closed all the hiking trails. They've closed all the beaches. They've closed pretty much anywhere you would normally go outside has been shut down. But at the same time, I've lived here my entire life, and I cannot remember the sky ever being clearer. There's zero pollution. And the sky's the bluest I've ever seen it. And so I have a pretty young golden retriever that I've got to walk like 5 miles a day or he'll destroy my house.
Right.
So I usually go early in the morning. So I'm admitting on a podcast right now that I'm breaking the law every day, but I'll literally go into this nature area kind of behind my house, which is closed. And what's so weird is 2 weeks of that thing being closed to the public, and there's like horned owls flying around and coyotes cruising around. And it's like, what's that Will Smith movie, I Am Legend?
Right.
Like nature has taken the land back. It's really weird. It's only been like 2 weeks.
I don't think anyone would have ever guessed that it could happen that quickly, but same thing all over the world.
Italy, the canals
all
clear.
The nasty canal. I mean, those things stink. They're clear. You can see the sun in China and around these major industrial. So it's funny
something
how
good out of something bad. Basically.
It's funny how quickly we've been able to affect climate change in a matter of weeks, which is not anything anyone prior to this would have. Everybody said, "Oh, that doesn't matter. Oh, it does. You can't do that.
No. Who
Who cares?" But you can see how fast it changed, which is really cool. So despite the fact that not easy times for everybody, I keep trying to look for I'm like, man, what could change? What are some of the things that annoy me right now that could change? And that's certainly one of them. Like a cleaner environment's nice. Could you get a fun car out and go drive around in LA right now? Are you banned from driving or what? What's it look like?
Technically, I've got a buddy who's a captain in the CHP, and I've been talking to him about it. And technically, there's nothing illegal about going out and driving. Like, you're not supposed to go anywhere non-essential. There's all these sort of guidelines. If you're not flagrantly breaking the law, there's not a lot they can really do. And what I've been told, and I don't know if this is 100% true across all the law enforcement agencies, is they've also been told if someone's doing something really illegal, pull them over. But other than that, assume everybody has corona.
Right.
So they're being kind of hands off too. So, that Claude Lelouch movie from the 70s, Rendezvous, where he bombs around, I think, Paris. And I think they dubbed it with a Ferrari V12, so it sounds super awesome. But I think it was actually like a V8 Mercedes, where it's just hauling ass around. Can I say that? Is that cool?
Yes, you could. You could say whatever you want. Yeah.
All right. So he's hauling ass around Paris at dawn, and at the very end, he pulls up with the hot girl coming down the steps.
Oh, yeah.
I am dying to go out and do that right now. And we've got some pretty bitchin' stuff, and I've got a Cobra, and I thought to take the Cobra and go do it. But there's a little part of me that's afraid if I post that, the internet will send me hate mail because I'm not social distancing or whatever. So
you are social I was thinking
you're not up against anybody.
Back to what you were talking about in a second, it's more interesting. But I was I was talking to my wife last night, and I was saying, well, what do you think we could do? And she's like, well, you guys can make masks. You've got all the sewing machines, and you have anything you can donate to hospitals? I'm like, yeah, we've got some extra like N95 stuff that we don't like really need. I was like, what if we did like the Corona cruise? Is that bad? Does that sound bad? Because we're gonna get in our cars.
Right.
We're all gonna. It'll be like this. Line up along this road at this time. Do not get out of your cars and just go drive around.
Just go for a big drive. Yeah. You know how many people would show up for that right now?
I think it would be insane.
Yeah.
And I thought of it in terms of like raising money. Like here's like, and you're not gonna be able to collect money from people, but put up a page, raise money. And I think people would,
Or just cruise through hospital parking lots or nursing home parking lots, so all the people that are cooped up could see all the cool cars. That's kind of a neat way to do it.
Yeah.
So I'll let you know if we do the Corona cruise. Maybe it's a bad idea, but I'm not really sure.
Well, one thing we're doing right now, and it's funny because at the start of the conversation we were talking about social, and we've been trying everything we can to figure out how to just help get more content out there to keep people entertained. And so one of the things we launched yesterday across a bunch of different channels was something called the Driveway Car Show. So I think Centerforce Clutches posted about it, Speedcore posted about it, we got Ring Brothers to post about it. Where basically what we're telling people is, if you've got something cool in the garage, and I don't care if it's a hot rod, Jeep, race car, whatever, pull it out, shoot some video, start it up, shoot a bunch of revs, walk around, talk about it, and then just post it on social and use that hashtag Driveway Car Show, and at least everyone can kind of share what they got virtually, if not in person.
That's pretty cool.
I think you should. Maybe you can baby step into the Claude Lelouch. Like you can step, like just get out. You got to get out on something cool. Don't go flog it around town. Just go drive it around town. Like kind of see how you feel. Make sure the car's running right.
I think the longer this goes on, the more that stuff's going to start to happen. People are going to go a little stir crazy.
I think people are on the verge of I'm kind of I hope they don't get too stir crazy, but I think it's like we've had like our
nature. You're locked up for too long.
People want to get out. So I'm kind of, I think we're getting very close to the stir crazy, but I don't know what people would do if they actually got out. So maybe they'd go drive a Cobra through downtown LA real fast.
My fantasy is I've got a client who's a car designer that has some pretty awesome stuff, including a Porsche 906 Le Mans car with a license plate.
Yeah.
And it's like a real 906, and he had it registered somehow. I don't even know how he got it registered.
Turn signals and headlights. Right.
And I've been grinding on him. I'm like, dude, you need to just go through downtown LA and just don't even break the speed limit. Just drive around in your Le Mans car through the empty streets of Los Angeles. It'd be amazing. Yep. But he's kind of like, I don't know. What if they get mad at me?
Actually, it's a good time for Ken Block, I think, to get out there.
Yeah, maybe. I mean,
except he's handing the keys over. He's got, I don't know. I've heard rumors that maybe someone else is going to step into his shoes on the next Gymkhana.
Oh, really?
I haven't heard that rumor. Who is it going to be?
That's the rumor.
Nobody knows. It's just a rumor. You know who it is. I feel like you know who it is. So around here, the streets don't look like they look in LA. People are still going places, but there's nowhere to go. But are drive-through restaurants open? Can you go
drive-throughs are open. A lot of the non-drive-through restaurants are doing curbside pickup, but it's weird. There's just not a lot of people out right now.
No, people are staying home on their own, right?
Yeah, I mean, I've got one of my employees came into the office to pick up some camera gear, and he lives normally about an hour from work, and it took him 17 minutes to get here.
Right.
Because there's just no one on the freeway. It's just empty.
Yeah. Well, I think it shows in the rates there because they're not getting really crazy, and there's a lot of people that live there. So at least they were the last time I looked.
Compared to New York, especially.
Compared to New York, which is unfortunate.
Right. The New York thing is tough.
Yeah, it's not. I think they always get hit by stuff like this. So what are some of the hopping off the Corona train? Can you talk quickly about, or not quickly, just about some of the different companies you guys work with? Because I think people would be interested to hear, some of their favorite companies you guys do a lot for.
Yeah, we're really fortunate. We work with a pretty diverse group of companies. The original idea behind the company, behind Kahn Media, was to create sort of a different type of agency. When I started this business, the aftermarket especially, but like kind of the whole car world, there were like traditional PR agencies that would send out press releases and things like that. And There was a little bit on the marketing side, but no one was really doing sort of the combination of PR, digital, social, content creation, and creative. So when we came in, we were totally focused on the automotive aftermarket. We've since diversified, so we do some OEM work. We work with some museums. We do a lot of events, including a lot of kind of higher-end car shows and races. So we work with, on the aftermarket side, everything from like hardcore race parts companies like Aeromotive, Centerforce clutches, HRE wheels, Nitto tire, Coker tire. On the restoration side, we do some builders, work with the Ring Brothers, work with Speedcore, work with Classic Recreations, used to work with you guys, obviously, like you said. We work with a lot of events, which the event business is kind of weird right now, but
Very
we do.
Strange, right?
Yeah, the Quail Motorsports Gathering is a good one. The McCall Motorworks Revival up in Monterey Car Week. We work on the kind of digital side of things. We are the agency of record for ClassicCars.com and with Bring a Trailer. We do the Peterson Automotive Museum since pretty much for about like 8-9 years now.
Right.
The Mullen Automotive Museum, Rodeo Drive Concours, Lotus Cars, we're the agency of record for Lotus. We also do with Rolex, we're their agency of record in North America. So we do everything from like the Rolex Reunion to the 24 Hours of Daytona, all their F1 activations.
So basically, you guys have all of my favorite things in one.
All the cool stuff.
You got all the cool stuff.
He's living the dream.
You are. Yeah. I mean, not only just to work for one of those companies is a dream for most people, but you get to work with so many different companies. I imagine you get to you kind of get to go everywhere and do every cool automotive thing that everybody says they want to do and maybe don't do, or maybe only do a little bit of. You're there all the time. So.
Yeah, and what's fun is we also, we have clients like Magnaflow and like Quadratech, which is a big Jeep parts retailer, where they have so many different things happening. That's what makes it really cool. Like with Magnaflow, one week we're working on Easter Jeep Safari, and the next week we're working with Rich over there on C8 Corvette exhaust, and it's just like different every week, which is really fun because I'm ADD. I can't do one thing forever, so that helps.
Yeah, I think maybe most of the people in this industry are ADD.
I'm pretty sure.
It works well for us.
Right.
So you've been, you've been involved with SEMA for forever.
About a decade, yeah.
About a decade, and then before that, you've been going to SEMA shows for.
Yeah, you told me one time. How many shows or how many SEMA shows have you gone to now?
98 was my first show,
okay.
So
Gosh.
2021.
Yeah.
Time flies.
How did you originally get into cars? What got you started?
It's a good question. My dad's a car guy. Actually, my grandpa was a car guy, but he was like a Great Depression car guy.
Yeah.
So he was a car guy, but he's into like restored Model A's and like,
sure,
the stock stuff. He thought hot rodding was like the devil.
Right.
He was, it's a waste of money. Why'd you take a good car and ruin it?
Yeah.
So still a car guy, just like his dream was to have like a restored LaSalle. Like it was just, different era.
Cars,
but my dad was like, my dad graduated from high school in 65, and he was one of those guys that like literally grew up cruising Van Nuys Boulevard. He had a bunch of really cool cars and hot rods back in the mid 60s, and kind of a traditional hot rod, SoCal car guy. So I kind of grew up with that.
Yeah.
Well, lucky you. That'd be a
the,
good way to.
The mecca of
Yeah,
cars.
exactly.
All the people around you too. It's just, I'm sure it was amazing growing up during that time period for you.
Yeah,
as
and
well.
I didn't even realize it was interesting when I was a kid. My dad, he had a lot of cars. My dad's had probably a couple hundred cars. He can't hold on to anything very long, but there was about a 4 or 5 year period when I was probably like 6 to maybe 10 or 11, where he had a 71 Stingray convertible, and it was like the typical Pro Street 80s build where it had those centerline wheels that were like solid with the rivets all the way around them.
Right.
And it was mini tubbed, and it had a small block with a 671 and a bug catcher.
Yes.
And the bug catcher was higher than the windshield, and he would take me to school in that. And everyone has that. Every car guy, I think, has that one memory where you're like, this is what did it.
Yeah, that's what did it for you.
That was it.
That's what did it. I'm like, holy shit, this thing. I'm sorry. Okay.
No,
fine.
All right. Like that for me. Like I can still smell it. It had side pipes. Like it was the most Pro Street typical 80s build, and I just that was the coolest thing in the universe. And what's cool is he sold it and bought something that he thought at the time was cool. I think it was like he bought like a C4 convertible after that, which I thought was like so bad.
Dad,
but
no.
You're like, what are you doing? But I didn't know this, but he sold it when I was still pretty young. And literally just like 2 years ago, he's getting older and he's kind of cleaning out his garage and stuff. And he called me up and he's like, hey, I found this hood. Do you want it? And it was the hood from the Stingray.
Really?
Because he couldn't sell it with the blower. No one wanted it.
Yeah.
So he put a stock motor back in and put a flat hood on it. So he found the hood with the cutout.
Oh, cool.
And I'm like, yeah. So I got it. And I went on Craigslist and I found a guy with an old 671. And I bought the blower, gutted it, took the rotors out, and then just put the intake and the two carbs and the fake bug catcher on it. And I built the whole thing into a single structure and mounted it on the wall of my office.
Oh, I've seen it.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's
So
awesome.
that's what that is. Every time I go into my conference room and I see that thing, I almost killed my art director because I had to get him to like hold it up there while we like bolted it to the wall.
Yeah.
But it's like that was like I get to look at that and go, okay, this is what
That was
made
the
me
start. Yeah.
a car guy.
Yeah.
Well, I think we all kind of remember our first thing.
Yeah,
So
for
that's
sure.
I don't have it on my wall though. So yeah, crazy. So I not to hop around here, but I hop around. I live a life of non sequiturs. I live a life of non sequiturs. So Charles and I keep talking about this and kind of just going back and forth. But we were like, with all of these different events shutting down, they've shut down like I think everything, all of our favorite Indy 500, all of our favorite auctions, and really any big gathering in the foreseeable future. So we're like, well, how long is this going to go? And
how can they fit all those car shows into June, July, and August?
Right. And also,
Right.
What's going to happen to our, I would say my favorite event, which is, SEMA. So the ultimate gathering of wonderful car people and great cars. So I know Dan is are you on the SEMA? You're on the board of SEMA? Yes. Yep. So we were hoping to gain some insight from you as to kind of what you guys were maybe thinking or what you were thinking personally.
So I guess I'll give you the disclaimer first that I'm on the SEMA board of directors and I'm also the chairman of the SEMA Show committee, which is a volunteer side that works with the staff. But I am not a staffer. So if you guys want to have like the official SEMA stance, you should talk to a spokesperson. But I can share some info of what's been going on because they have been pretty good about being really transparent with everybody.
Right.
So kind of here's what's going on. So I'm on the board. I'm on the show committee. We've had a lot of conference calls. They, just like everybody else, SEMA's working remote. So that's a pretty big organization because there's a trade association that runs the show. And the trade association has over 100 employees, and they've had to go remote while they're like right now, kind of this end of March through end of April is when they do all of the booth signups. It's when they cut the floor plan for the show. Yeah. All the really heavy lifting normally happens right now in this big war room in Diamond Bar, California, and they're having to do that from like their living rooms. So
it's crazy.
I have a huge amount of respect for. I've been there when they're doing it at the office, and it's an unbelievable effort.
Right.
But for them to be able to pull this off remote is crazy, but they're doing it. As of right now, and we've had a bunch of calls with staff and with the board, where things are kind of right now is the assumption is the show is on.
Right.
Staff has met with the CDC. They've met with all the different officials in Vegas and Nevada Health, and everyone is saying the same thing. They're all saying that the assumption is based on all the data they have at hand, this thing will have long since blown over by November. So they're operating under the assumption that everything is on. What's cool is the city, which owns sort of the convention center, and they have like a convention authority that kind of manages all the different trade shows.
Right.
They've been really cool. So they've been super proactive, and they've basically said, if we have to say no go and turn this thing off, that'll be our call, and we'll accept the liability of that. And then on the SEMA side, what they've said is, if for some reason we don't feel comfortable, but the city does, as a trade association, we can still make that call. And if we need to refund people's money, we can.
Okay.
So as an exhibitor, right now, there's very little to no risk. You can sign up for a booth, and if everything is good, great.
Right.
If for some bizarre reason this Corona thing is still an issue 6 months from now, you get your money back, no harm, no foul.
Yeah.
Can't see a better way to do it. So hopefully people are signing up, and it's as good a show as it ever is.
And it could potentially be a crazy, just awesome show because people are going to be excited to go do something,
right?
And they're going to have missed so many shows already that they're going to wait and bring their coolest stuff to SEMA this year. I'm thinking it could be amazing.
You're exactly right, Charles. And that's what it's really interesting. The staff has been really good about channeling kind of like grassroots feedback up to the board. And one of the things that we're hearing a lot of is exactly what you just said. People are saying, look, we see this as a linchpin in our business.
Right.
And even on a normal year, SEMA is really important for all these different companies. But this year, it's going to be more critical than ever.
Right.
And the other thing about it that's sort of interesting is I was at the '01 show. And remember, they shut down air traffic after 9/11 for a couple of months.
Yeah.
And SEMA was the first trade show in America after 9/11. And everyone was kind of like, and I wasn't involved in leadership at the time, but I just went to the show as a journalist and didn't know what to expect.
Sure.
And it was a super productive show because most of the manufacturers there, most of the car builders were there, but you didn't have quite the crowd density you normally have. Mm-hmm. So you could get around. It was effective. You could have really good meetings with people. Same thing in '08. It was down in terms of attendance a little bit, but people who went said it was a great show.
Yeah, I think there seems to be about a 50-50 split now where some people are like, there's way too many public people at this show. We want to, it's hard to do business.
Right.
And then a lot of people also see it, the other half sees it as a great way to, market the automotive industry to everyone, which is also, something we talk about that's important as well. So I guess worst case scenario, it'll be a productive show for business, but hopefully everybody shows up as well. I think that's a good thing to get people going on that. What's kind of I know what our take on it is. I'm sure SEMA is kind of the same, but what's SEMA kind of doing this, or what are the plans this year for getting people, new people involved in the hobby and getting kids to be active participants in automotive.
So great question, and there's been a thing for the last 3 years or so that SEMA has been aggressively pursuing, both from a staffing situation and from actually monetary as well. That's a youth engagement initiative, and they've launched a lot of programs. They're really cool, and it's kind of a variety of different things. And because what we're trying to do is get people into sort of the funnel of being a car person at different age levels. Yeah. So like my kids are 5, 7, and 9. And for those younger kids, they have a book program. I don't know if you've ever heard of this, but like Dolly Parton actually has this book program where it's a big literacy thing. And any parent in America that wants books can just go on this website, register when your kid is born, and they send you age-appropriate books for free in the mail.
I did not know.
And it's cool. Super cool, and it's really successful. So we actually kind of borrowed that and worked with a couple of different authors. There's a guy named Chris Van Dusen, who's a really cool illustrator who wrote a great book called If I Built a Car. And it's kind of crazy and cartoony and all that, but it's great. And so they sent out, like, I think somewhere around 10,000 of those books to elementary schools, libraries, different kind of preschools, all these different programs to get them into the hands of kids. The feedback has been amazing. SEMA funded that whole thing.
Nice.
They worked with Championship Auto Shows, which does that big chain of indoor car shows, including Detroit Autorama, but a lot of other shows too, all kind of through the Midwest, and brought in 6 figures. I don't remember the number, but it was at least 100,000 junior high age kids were brought in at no cost. And they actually created situations where these kids can not only come in before show, like open hours, see the show, see the cars, but also interact with the builders, ask questions. That's also been really successful. So a bunch of different programs like that are all working really well.
So I think a lot of people that listen to this and just general car enthusiasts don't see. They kind of see the showy side of SEMA. They know the show. They know the vehicles that are there. They might go there in person. They might see in the press. But SEMA also does a lot to address issues that affect the car industry and custom car shops. Can you touch on a couple of those, just so kind of people? I think it's one of those things that nobody realizes that how much work SEMA does.
Yeah. So in fact, SEMA has a pretty active political action committee. If you're a gun person, everyone knows about the NRA.
Right.
And then there's some other organizations. Not a lot of people realize that's a big part of SEMA's mission, is sort of protecting the rights of car people. That's everything from racers to shops like you guys, builders, manufacturers. So there is a DC office. They do a lot of lobbying on behalf of the industry. And like you said, Noah, it's a small, super hardworking, talented group, and it's sort of a stealth mode operation where they don't get a lot of visibility. But probably their biggest victory to date is something called the Low Volume Manufacturing Act. And for many, many years, if you were like those guys in Texas, DeLorean Motor Company, they're building new DeLoreans, or if you're Superformance and you're building Cobras, or like those guys in Detroit that build the steel 32 Ford Roadsters.
Dearborn Deuce.
Yeah, Dearborn Deuce. Thank you. So if you're building those cars, the challenge is in a lot of states, some customer comes in and says to Superformance, hey, I want a 427 Cobra. Well, they can sell you a car with no motor and trans, and you got to go somewhere else to put in motor and trans, and you got to figure out how to register it. And you can't really register it as a 2020 Cobra because you don't have any paperwork. So you have to register it as an old thing, even though it's not. And it's all kind of gray area, right?
Right.
So what Low Volume did is, and it took like 5 years of lobbying, and they finally got it passed in the 2015 National Highway Transportation Bill. And basically what it did is it created language to say, hey, look, if you're a shop and you're using parts that are licensed by the manufacturer, so like in a Cobra, it would be licensed by Shelby. If it's a 65 Mustang, it'd be licensed by Ford, which those bodies mostly are.
Right.
If you're doing that and you're doing less than 200 of these cars a year or 250 of these cars a year, and you're using an emissions certified motor. So like in the case of GM, they have that E-Rod, which is basically an LS3 with a full exhaust system and cats and an EO number. So it's basically a motor with paperwork.
Sure.
Right.
If you do that, this will create the opportunity as a builder to go register this as a new reproduction car. And that means you don't have to do crash testing. You don't have to do emissions testing. I mean, the total number of these things on the road is so small, it'll have minimal impact on the environment.
Yeah.
And, they don't get driven very much anyway. They're collector cars. And it gives you kind of a legal way to kind of get all that done. Unfortunately, it took 5 years after the law passed to get Washington to actually do all the rulemaking, which was challenging.
Right.
But they finally did it. It just happened. And honestly, the reason it happened is what's weird is the EPA actually reacted fairly quickly and said kind of, here's the rules to this totally new thing no one's ever done before to get basically a title, right? The NHTSA, which is like kind of the safety side of it, not the emission side of it, just didn't do anything. And they had like a 1 year window back when Obama was president where they were supposed to do it.
Right.
And they didn't do it. And then they missed the second year extension. And then, a new president came in and they missed that. And they just kept completely ignoring it. And so finally SEMA sued the federal government.
Right.
Wow.
And said, basically, look, you are a total violation of your own rules.
Right.
And
should have been done.
Thankfully.
Right.
Yeah. And that lawsuit was filed, and literally within 45 days, all of a sudden NHTSA gets their stuff together, and here's all the rulemaking, and it all happens. And so that thing is finally happening. But that's going to create a lot of jobs. And I mean, not just for DeLorean and Superformance and Dearborn Deuce. It's going to create jobs for all the companies that are supplying them parts, clutch companies, air conditioning companies, gauge companies.
Right.
ARP makes bolts. It's going to give them more business. So, I mean, all these different companies that supply them will also have new jobs created as a result of that, which right now is necessary.
Absolutely. And when did that stuff pass? Well, it passed, but when did they finally make it so?
They issued the rulemaking just a few weeks ago. So It's end of March now. It's 27th of March. And I think it happened late February.
So now.
So we should start seeing those changes pretty soon.
So now, for example, will Superformance be able to build a complete car?
Yeah. So here's the next sort of challenge with this thing, because this is all new.
Right.
Is in theory, hopefully this COVID thing doesn't slow things down too much. We'll have our final paperwork done, and then we can start kind of giving everyone the guidance of how to sort of file their paperwork to generate these titles, and they're good.
Right.
The challenge now is the way the law is written is you have to use an emissions compliant motor with an EO number, and the only company currently making one is GM.
Gotcha.
So, if you want to build a new 57 Chevy with a licensed Dynacorn body, you're good. If you want to put an LS motor in your Cobra, I guess you could do that, but not a lot of people would want to.
Right. Just don't open the hood. That's right.
So that's the next step is I don't know if Ford and FCA are planning on doing these or not. I've heard rumors that some of the aftermarket companies might be doing that, which would be really cool if like an Edelbrock or a
Oh, yeah?
Roush could step up. That'd be
Right.
awesome. But I don't know if they are right now.
So it would be a matter of them producing the engine and all the emission stuff to go along with it, and then they'd have to have it tested, right?
Right.
And approved, yeah.
Yeah. But, you know, the nice thing is the EO process, which stands for executive order, which is like basically the paperwork to say this is smog legal, it has gotten a lot easier. And that's actually something SEMA also did on sort of the ledge reg side, is they have a building called the SEMA Garage, which is a giant emissions testing lab. And they basically have been working hand in hand with the state and federal government to try and streamline it. Because, I mean, I remember when I got started in this industry, if you wanted to get something EO certified, it was a hugely time and cash intense process. You had to spend a lot of money. You had to go to third-party labs. It would take a year. That's a tough deal if you're a small business developing a product for sale in the aftermarket.
You almost can't do it.
Yeah.
Right. So this has made it a lot easier. I'm now hearing of like 2-3 month turnarounds where you send your part to the SEMA Garage, you pay a small fee. It's pretty reasonable. They do all the testing. They help you actually fill out all the paperwork to send to the government. And in fact, it got so good for a while that the government started getting a backlog because there was so much paperwork landing on their desk. There was only so many people in the physical office to process it.
Right.
Yeah.
But that's good for our industry because it actually shows that, like, look, I think, where gearheads are at their core kind of armchair engineers. And if you tell everyone this is the right way to do it, most people will try and do it the right way.
Yeah.
But you have to give them that path. And that's one of the things the SEMA Garage did.
Yeah. I think that's one of the major holdups. If people want to do something like that, like, can I do this? Is it illegal? Am I going to go to jail? What's like, what,
Right.
how do I? So yeah, that's a wonderful thing that they're able to do, especially for the hobby. And so now we just need some manufacturers to step up and make some emission stuff, I guess,
I'm sure it's coming.
Yeah. It won't take that long. I guess it'll be interesting to see. I mean, the other thing is people, as an enthusiast, I'm thinking, well, that kind of cuts down on your choices for engines and say a Superformance Cobra. So we know our customers well, and they love to be able to, well, I'm looking at this and this option and this other option, and I'm not sure which way I want to go. So, but I think
that's a growing market, though. I think people love Superformance and some of the other companies like that, where they can design a car, throw all their parts at it, and it's a custom car, but it's manufactured, and.
Well, yeah, right. And I mean, the perfect example is one of my earliest clients, and he's been a client since pretty much day one, is Classic Grid Creations out of Yukon, Oklahoma. And Jason basically, he builds like 30, 35 cars a year. He's licensed by Shelby, and they're almost entirely GT350s and GT500s.
Yeah.
And it's pretty much like an assembly line. I mean, he's got, a building where he's just doing metalwork, and a building where they're just doing paint and body, and a building where they're doing assembly, and the motor room. And so for them, this is a godsend because their customers are not, by and large, DIY guys.
Right.
Their customers are usually a wealthy guy. Sometimes they're in this country, sometimes they're international. They've already got a Ferrari and a new Porsche Turbo, and it's like, hey, I want a car like Dallas Raines drove in Gone in 60 Seconds or whatever.
Yeah, right.
And so literally it's like, that guy wants a Coyote motor and a 5 or 6 speed and doesn't really want to mess with a carburetor. He just wants it to start because he's not really working on it.
Right.
So for that person, if they can get something that's brand new, didn't start as some rust bucket body, started as a brand new aftermarket body, all new parts, you can take it and get it serviced at your local Ford dealer if you're not near a performance shop. That's a good thing.
Yeah, I think people see great value in that, and we hear that kind of echoed by our customers quite a bit because they just, and even people that have owned, all the crazy stuff. I think a lot of people, from crazy show cars to wild performance stuff, it seems like the general vibe in the market is, I just want something they can drive. They want to, people are busy. They're working more and more hours. They don't have a whole lot of time. So the ability to kind of step out in your garage, step into something and just go out and drive it and have it work there's a lot of value there.
That's a lot more of like our recent request that we're getting. People are like, here's the horsepower that I want. I want this kind of suspension, these brakes, and I'm going to drive this car any nice day that comes in front of me. Like, I'm getting it out, I'm going. And I'm glad to hear that, really, because it as builders, it's cool because our cars are out there being driven all over the place, and it shows, the level of quality that we produce, and also the parts too that we use, can stand up to that kind of use.
No, we really do want you to come to us and say, we want like 1,500 horsepower. Yeah.
Yeah.
But in reality is it's good to have people, you know what? I'm glad people are, enthusiastic about getting out and actually driving. So.
But the other thing that's happened that's so interesting is my first real job when I was in high school in the kind of early to mid 90s was I worked at, I don't know if you guys remember, Performance Automotive Warehouse, PAW.
Oh, yeah.
They used to have those like
the
ads in the middle of the magazines that were like, yeah, with the blower motor, right? Their logo, and they had these like 6-page black and white little catalog spreads, and they're out of business now. But they were like one of the original kind of bigger kind of warehouse style speed shops along with Summit. And I worked the counter, in high school. It was a great job. But back then, we had a lot of street racers coming in. This is before all the Fast and Furious stuff. This was back when it was mostly domestic performance. And, a guy would come in and say, I want to make like 600 horsepower. And first of all, that was a big deal.
Yeah.
It's like, whoa, anything over 500, this guy's crazy.
Right.
And the way you'd get it is, a root style blower, a couple of big Hollies, crazy cam, long tube headers, and you've got a pretty gnarly thing that's not very fun to drive.
Right.
These days, you can get 600 horsepower with some pretty basic bolt-ons on an LS motor, like not a big deal.
Too, really.
It's
not that rowdy.
Right. You could drive around and you could putt around town like it doesn't have any, like it has
your commute car.
Yeah, like it has 200 horsepower, but if you mash it, it does not. So we're spoiled, and it's reliable.
It's gotten a lot easier, and even on the drivetrain side, you look like Centerforce now with their like dyad and triad clutches and stuff. Before, to get something that could handle 700, 800, 900 horsepower, it was not very fun to drive, and these days these things are pretty easy.
Yeah,
it's awesome. So everybody's I think we're living at the well, hopefully not, but probably a horsepower high point where there's just you can have wild numbers and have it be reliable, both in stuff you can go to the showroom and buy, that comes with a wild warranty.
Well,
and
when you call some of these engine builders like Wegner or Kazi, I remember ordering that Boss 9 engine for Pete's 1970 Ford F100 we built, and I
love that truck.
Yeah, it's a great truck, and I call them up. I said, okay, we want this engine, the Boss 9 engine, but the customer's looking for around 700 horsepower, and they go, well, we could try to build an engine with 700 horsepower. I go, oh, aren't they they're normally higher than that, right? He's like, yeah, it's kind of hard just to produce 700. It's like, that's tuning it way far down. I'm like, okay, all right, I get where you're going. All right, give us what you can.
Right. Yeah.
So came out like 730, and that was like pinching it down as far as they could,
right.
It's crazy now. Roush is a client, and around SEMA of last year, they sent us like a special edition Stage 3 Mustang that they were going to take to the SEMA Show for a debut, and they wanted us to shoot it and do some PR with it before we took it to SEMA. And this thing drives like a new Cadillac, and it's got 840 horsepower.
Right.
Yeah.
And they got that almost entirely with just a big blower, intake exhaust, and an aggressive tune, and that's it. Like the long block is totally stock.
They didn't mess with the internals, nothing at all.
No, it doesn't have a stroker, it doesn't have cams. All the whole long block is stock. It's all external stuff.
There's reliability for you. Some guy can hop in that. Wow.
Yeah.
How many?
And it drives like a stock car. That's what's so crazy.
Yeah, we're living in a best of both worlds scenario right now.
Sure.
So it's
People
still want the old gnarly stuff, though. That's the thing that's it's kind of
analog crazy feel where it's loud, rattly. You smell all the exhaust, and there is something to be said.
There's always people pushing back on the newer performance stuff in the older cars because they want the sound of a big block with a cam in it. That's what they really want.
I gotta admit that's me.
Right.
I like something that lopes and smells like gas.
Right. You want to get out of we have more and more people saying like it's we'll build stuff or they'll buy a car at Barrett or whatever it might be, and they'll call us and they'll be like, well, it just kind of smells, what it just kind of like. I'm like, yeah,
my garage smells like
gas. My garage smells like gas, or
yeah, it does.
Yeah, right. My wife kind of smells like exhaust when she gets out of it. Like, yeah, it's a pretty raw machine.
Right.
Even if they're real refined, but yeah. So there's kind of like that side, and the other side, they're like, I love that. They'll come in the shop and they'll be taking real deep breaths, Like, I love that smell. I'm like, yeah, that's the smell of a bunch of raw fuel and nasty exhaust. But people have fond memories tied to that. So it's interesting. I like it. Yeah, I think we're all there. So
I bought a car right during Barrett. I've wanted a Cobra for a while, and I found a car on ClassicCars.com about middle of summer 19, and it's an ERA 289 FIA. And ERA makes a really nice, reproduction car. They're kind of hand built in Connecticut, and it was actually originally owned by Reggie Jackson. And the guy that was selling it did a weird job marketing it. He bought an ad on Classic Cars, but it didn't have very much information. It had a one really crappy cell phone shot, and
a dark garage.
And he was kind of weird about not being very communicative. I reached out to him, and he was like, well, that's my summer house and I'm not there, so I'll let you know. I'm like, yeah, good way to sell a car.
Yeah.
So it was just kind of weird. And so I just kind of sort of honestly kind of moved on. And then in January, I get this note from him, and he's like, yeah, it's weird. Nobody's, shown any interest. And I'm thinking yeah, no kidding. You're kind of a dick. But I hear from him, and he said, yeah, I'm going to be in Arizona, and it's in this little town called Wickenburg, which is just north of Phoenix. And he kind of said, hey, I'm in town, and if you want to come look at it. And I was going in for Barrett, and Classic Cars does their big annual Future Collector car show anyway, so I was in town. So I thought, I'll go check it out. And I went up there, and he gives me his address to go look at the car. And it's an airport, and they've got this little airstrip in Wickenburg. And he opens up the hangar, and he's got an L-88 C3 Corvette, and he's got a 62 Fuelie, and he's got this really bitchin' airplane, and he's got a spare motor for the L-88. He's got all this awesome stuff in there. And I'm like, whoa, this guy's legit.
Pretty serious, yeah.
And there's the car, and it's bitchin'. It's really nice, and it's got 300 miles on it total.
Right.
And I'm going why don't you drive it? And he's like, oh, it's really loud. So it's exactly what you're saying. And so the thing, it's got an 11.5-to-1 small block.
Right.
And totally open exhaust. So it's got, dual 3-inch exhaust that just dumps, out the side, no mufflers, nothing. And admittedly, it's loud.
Right.
With that much compression in a little car. So he's like, yeah, I don't drive it. My wife hates it. It's too loud. I just like looking at it, but it's got to go. So I bought it. And honestly, it's not that hard to make it a little quieter. It's called MagnaFlow and got some mufflers for it. And, and I like how analog it is. I like it. Especially right now with everything being so stressful, you're cooking down the freeway and you can smell it and you can hear it. And
that's awesome. Yeah.
It's about as raw as you can. I mean, there's other stuff but it's a nice raw experience, loud and hot and fast, and
it's supposed to be.
You got to pay it. I think it's like an awesome stress relief thing. You can't sit and worry about stuff if you're driving that car. Yeah, it's like a motorcycle, or you have to focus on what you're doing. You
watch
can't.
You got to watch the road. Yeah.
So it's the whole experience.
No texting and driving. No Bluetooth. It's just drive.
You don't need it. You don't need it at all. So that's cool. So will it run? What kind of fuel do you use in it?
I've been running avgas in it, which actually does okay.
Yeah.
But it does okay.
It's like 100 octane low lead, and it's cheaper than race gas. So that's actually been working all right.
So do you have to go fill up at the airport, or do you have a 55-gallon drum?
There's actually a station not too far from my office that sells it. So
really?
That's been helpful
for people like you and me.
Yeah, there's a little more freedom where I live than in LA, so that helps.
Right. So I think you need to get out in that thing and make the video. It's time. Yeah. It's time to go. Time to go rip it through downtown.
You had a cool little boat last time we were out there at your place. Do you still have that boat? I forgot
about the boat.
The disco special. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
That's awesome.
So
what is the make and model of the boat exactly?
I've had a lot of flat bottoms. Most of the boats I've had have been V drives, and I've had a lot of big motor stuff. And this one's unusual because it's only outboard I've ever owned. And a real close family friend that I've known most of my life used to work at a company called Bob Warren Hurricane Boats. And Hurricane built a lot of circle boats and a lot of drag boats back in the 70s. Mm-hmm. And my kind of family friend, Mike Lambert, built this thing when he worked there in 77. And he kind of put a bunch of stuff in the mold and set it up to be an outboard ski race boat. And then he had a guy named Carter paint it, who was pretty famous back in the 70s and 80s for like a lot of dragster paint jobs, a lot of like, multicolor candies and a lot of like pinstriping. And so it's got a Carter paint job, and it's like, 5 different tones of orange and root beer brown and metallic gold and all this stuff.
It's awesome looking.
We'll have to get a picture of it.
Yeah, if you can send us a picture,
I'll send you.
We'll have Tim throw it in.
Picture.
I remember looking at it.
It's got a 250 horse Merc on it. So.
And so it's the original paint still from back then, right? Everything.
Yeah. So what's interesting about this guy, Mike, is everything he's ever owned, he still owns, and everything stays in a garage and nothing ever gets used. So this thing sat on its original trailer with its original paint job under a cover from 1977 until when he gave it to me because he got a different boat and basically said, I need to get rid of this thing. So he kept his race motor, gave me the hull. I put a new motor on it and gauges and all that. And then I just keep it undercover in my warehouse. So it's never been outside. It's never spent a night in the water. So it gets used and goes right back on the trailer again.
So do you get your family actually out? Do you get to use it? Yeah.
Hell yeah. My kids love it.
That thing's awesome.
It goes about 80.
Yes.
But not with my wife in it. So, with my wife in it, it goes about 30. But, my kids all drive it. They know how to ski behind it. It's been fun.
Oh, that's great. Awesome. What do you have a Mercury engine in it now or what?
Yeah. It's a 2.5 Merc.
Sweet. 80. That's the right speed in a little boat. Is it 20? Is it even 20 feet long?
No, it's 18 feet.
Perfect.
Yeah. Admittedly, the challenge we've had out here is the lakes have been a challenge the last couple of years. We've had so many droughts.
Yeah.
They're really low. Yeah. So don't get to use as much as I'd like.
Nevertheless.
Well, if you get bored and you want to sell it or anything like that, just call us up.
We're just waiting with extra warehouse space and in the lake of the Ozarks, which is not that clean, but seems to always have plenty of water. I don't think you could survive in the lake of the Ozarks.
That's like the ocean.
It's like the ocean. This lake is like the ocean. And people come. Have you ever heard of the lake of the Ozarks or been to the lake? Okay.
No, but I've heard of it, and I've seen pictures from like the poker runs with the giant offshore boats and all that.
Exactly. So if you've got a big offshore cat, you can. There's people flying up and down this lake, which is just a stopped up river.
Right. There's no speed limit.
There's no. It's so dangerous.
You can be out there in a pontoon, and a 50-foot cat can come by at 150 right in front of you. It's pretty unique.
It's very, very dangerous, but it's interesting because people come from all over the country. And all over the world, people come from everywhere, and they might have a house there, and they hang out at this lake in the middle of Missouri. I'm always like, what? I can like kind of see, you're like, oh, I get why you come here, but at the same time, like, why are you coming here? You could be anywhere. You could be anywhere in the world in your boat, but
for boat lovers like powerboat people,
it's
like going to a big car show for us because
that's
true, where the majority of those boats are. It's like the largest group of those kind of boats in the whole country is at that lake. And
running around like maniacs.
The next to it. So.
We have Lake Havasu about 4.5 hours away, which is similar, not quite as big, but same crowd, same poker run deal. And we stopped going. My wife and I used to go a lot, and I used to have a 21-foot Grand National style kind of endurance boat with a Gale Banks twin turbo 500-inch big block in it. and it was fast. That thing went about 100 miles an hour.
What does that boat look? What does a boat like that look like? Is a
21 feet long, low gunnel, pretty kind of classic lines, but like a day cruiser, but with a big motor.
Right.
And and we really set that thing up. I blueprinted the bottom and Teflon coated the bottom, and it was set up to go, 80 all day long.
Wow.
And was super fun on little lakes. And on Havasu, when I first started taking it, it was fun. But once my wife and I got married and we started to kind of settle down, that's when the crazy poker run, catamaran, Ilmore V10 thing started getting crazy. And all of a sudden, like you said, Charles, there's guys out there where you're going along in your 21-foot boat, and some guy who hasn't even spent that much time boating comes motoring by you in his monster at 100 miles an hour, and the wake almost swamps you. And half the time they're drunk. And,
That's important side note. They're drunk.
Yeah. And there was enough close calls. And then we thankfully never had any real issues, but there were some fatalities where just stupid avoidable things where people are just drunk and dumb. we finally kind of said, okay, I think we're good, and we stopped going there.
Yeah.
That's one of the crazy things about those. Some of those things are huge, and they've got, 2 or 3 massive engines, and the people aren't. Maybe it's their first boat,
right?
Right.
There's some boats at the Lake of the Ozarks that are like 5,000 horsepower, basically, between all the engines they have, or more.
Yeah.
And then they're hanging out at a bar, and then they go back at nighttime. They're cruising that big boat, no speed limit. Well, they're supposed to be going slow, but they're flying at just pitch black out. It's a little scary.
Kind of trying to show off. Yeah. Maybe got a little buzz on.
Got
Bad combination.
5 girls they don't know.
5 girls they don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh man, yeah. I've never been to Lake Havasu. I kind of would like to go, but I'll take your note and get on somebody else's bigger boat and bring something small. There's a lot of little coves. Is that like where there's like you can kind of stay out of harm's way?
Yeah, when I was in college, that was like peak Havasu when it was on like MTV Spring Break and all that.
Yeah,
and that's when it was pretty great because most of the people that were out there were on pontoon boats. Everybody was there to have a good time. Lots of people had a good time. Right. But there wasn't like, you didn't have to worry about like, the drunk guy trying to impress the college girl going 130 down the lake in his catamaran. So for a while it was good. And then for a while it was a little sketchy, and I haven't been in a few years, so I don't even know what it's like now, but.
I got a couple more questions for you before we don't take up any more of your time. But any new? I could probably keep talking to you for 2 hours because I think we'll endlessly generate conversation. But we would love to have you back on and maybe do it again.
I'd love to.
In 6 months. But any new stuff coming up? Does SEMA have any new plans? Any new stuff that maybe you could tell us about that they might be doing at the show that they haven't done yet? Any stuff people can expect? I don't mean to throw that's a kind of a random question, but I was thinking any SEMA gossip.
Well, on the SEMA side, it's kind of always evolving. I think, the thing they tried last year that turned out to work really well was they did an overland section in the kind of new exhibitor tent.
I loved it. It was great. Yeah. I'm not even into that stuff. I was like, cool. This is sweet.
Yeah. Across the board, the feedback was really positive. One of our clients is Lance Campers, and they actually came to us and admittedly, like the RV industry is very conservative compared to the automotive aftermarket, especially the performance aftermarket. And I got to hand it to these guys. Their head of marketing is a guy named Bob Rogers, who came from Power Sports, which I think is why he was sort of willing to push the limit a little bit. And he came to us and said, hey, let's take something to that Overland exhibit and do something really cool. Do you have any ideas? So we helped them design and build this crazy rig called the Altimeter, where we took an F350, did a 4.5-inch like Icon Stage 5 lift, 40-inch tires. They took one of their big pop-out campers off their assembly line, and we did a full graphics package, and they vinyl wrapped it and installed really high-end suspension. The thing's got all these bitchin', fabricated bumpers, the biggest Warn winch they make, all the normal stuff, solar panels. It's totally set up for like the zombie apocalypse. Debuted it at SEMA. We let a journalist sleep in it. So it was really cool. And SEMA, to their credit, I was a little concerned that they would freak out and say no because of security issues. But they were like, okay, if someone wants to sleep in the SEMA show, I guess that's fine.
Right.
So this guy had like a night at the museum experience where he literally like slept in the camper, and then in the middle of the night, because he had like an all access pass, he wakes up out of his sleeping bag and starts wandering around taking pictures of all these cars in the show. That was really cool. So they're going to do that again, and that was pretty fun. I think, one of the things that's happening in Vegas right now that's sort of interesting is they're building the new kind of building as part of the convention center across the street, where I think it was like the Stardust, I think, or whatever that old hotel was across the street.
And a big parking lot in that old hotel, yeah.
Yeah, and then like Elon Musk's, like he calls it the Boring Company, where they like are building, like they make like subway tunnels basically.
Right.
They're creating this like underground monorail thing to connect all these buildings. So there's all this like construction happening. So the normal SEMA Cruise and Ignited and Battle of the Builders, that keeps kind of changing locations every year because they keep opening and closing parking lots and doing construction. So I think the staff is working pretty hard to sort of figure out what that's going to look like next year, but it keeps building on itself.
Is that building going to be ready next year? Because it was all like...
No, I think 2021 is when it'll be online.
Because last year a lot of it was, well, from an infrastructure, the structure was there, or at least maybe they're making it even bigger. I mean, it's huge though.
It's huge, and I've seen the renderings, and it's awesome looking. When this thing it's going to be a couple of years, because when they open that thing up, they're going to shut down one of the other halls just for a couple months to do kind of a remodel, and it's going to be kind of this little hopscotch thing, and it'll be a couple of years until all the new buildings are up and running. But when they're done, it's going to be really cool.
When something looks huge without walls, it's massive, and that thing is just like endless. It's pretty impressive. So
and like, have you guys SEMA is pretty much confined to the Las Vegas Convention Center, and then there's the big tent they put behind the Renaissance. But like, I went to SHOT Show a couple of years ago, which is the firearm industry's version of SEMA, basically. And like, that show takes over the whole Sands Convention Center. It's in a couple of the hotels, so. It kind of blows my mind how some of these trade shows, like Magic is the fashion industry one, where they like, the more square footage you give them, the more space they'll take. And these shows keep getting bigger and bigger.
I'd like to go to SHOT Show. I have not been to that. Actually,
dude, it's awesome.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
I look at pictures of the SHOT Show, like people that want to go to SEMA look at pictures of SEMA. I'm thinking, I would like to go there. This looks good. I think
consumer electronics would be
would be good too. I hear that's interesting. But
I went to CES and SHOT in the last couple of years, partly for my business and partly just to kind of, as a marketer, we're always trying to figure out how to help our clients kind of do the next big thing and be kind of ahead of the curve. And so it's always helpful to go and see how other industries do things. And to be honest, like I said earlier, I've been going to the SEMA show for 21 years. So I had this sort of impression that like, well, we are dialed in, man. No one does a trade show better than SEMA, the automotive aftermarket. This is the coolest convention on the planet. I went to SHOT Show and I was completely blown away because those firearm companies make so much money that their marketing budgets are so big that like you go to a booth like Kimber and the booth is like the size of the Ford booth at SEMA.
Really?
And they've got like super intricate displays and guns that are like floating in the air, suspended by like filament line. And they've got these crazy catalogs that have like foil embossed covers they're just giving out to everybody. And it's pretty crazy the level of execution they've got there. And then I thought, okay, this is the coolest thing I've ever been to. And then I went to CES and forget about it. Like that thing, I mean, you talk about a lot of money. The tech companies, it's just like
out of control.
I didn't love CES. I think they do a good job, obviously, but I'm sort of, I tend to be more about the people and the networking side of things. And the thing about CES that I thought was sort of weird is it kind of felt like you're walking through the streets in Manhattan, because the booths are so big and so massive. Samsung's got a booth that's like the entire width of one of the convention halls.
Right.
So you're walking along and there's these like walls around you everywhere you go, and the booths are massive 2-story booths, and it was hard for me to kind of connect with anything other than these big logos on the walls.
Right. Interesting. Maybe we should. I don't know.
Maybe we won't go to that one. We'll skip it.
But you know what? They're also full of tech nerds, so maybe those guys don't want to be around other people, and that's why they do it like that.
There you go. You're gonna hide behind. You can't hide behind those fabric-covered walls for too long, guys. Lastly, any crazy new projects coming up on your end at Kahn Media?
Yeah. So
I'm sure
honestly,
tons of them, but yeah.
The COVID thing has been a little bit of a curveball, but it's actually really pushed us to do some pretty interesting and fun stuff. So. Like the Peterson Automotive Museum's a longtime client, and obviously, it's not open to the public for the time being. We're not sure if that's going to be another couple of weeks or a month or whatever it is.
Right.
So we were able to help them pivot, and it's entirely gone virtual and online. We're doing a lot of online programming, so daily live stream vault tours, a lot of programmatic content for kids coming out of the education department. One of the things we're about to launch next week that's really cool is we're bringing in people like Freeman Thomas, who's like a really famous car designer.
Yeah.
We're talking to different people that are sort of, in some cases, if they're local and we can get them to come into an empty museum and do sort of like a TED Talk live, we'll do it. If we can't, and we can get them, like we'd like to have you do one.
Yeah.
And if you can do it, if you have the ability like you guys do to kind of just turn on a camera and stream it through their channel, through an emulator, we can do that. So a lot of programming, and that's been really fun. We also, like Quadratech is a client. They're a big Jeep parts retailer. And they're still technically open for business, even though they're mostly working from home. And we kind of went, okay, how do we, especially because like the Jeep audience is a very DIY audience, and it's also a very kind of like grassroots, middle America. Like these are not the same people that are buying, $500,000 sports cars. This is
Right.
a very kind of, middle class, everyday. I mean, like I'm a Jeep guy. It's like a regular audience, right?
Sure.
So one of the things we've tried to figure out is how do we connect that audience and also help them kind of stay distracted and not get too depressed, sitting there watching CNN, just, watching
so
the world.
CNN's
melt
so
down.
depressing. I'm over it. Show me your
Exactly.
automotive content. I'll watch anything.
So like,
become
one
a
of the
Jeep
things
guy.
I'll become a Jeep guy. I'll become a Jeep guy. Fine.
Well, and you know what I love about Jeeps is even the JL and the JT, even the newest stuff going all the way back to the earliest flat fender stuff, they're all simple to work on. You can get a ton of aftermarket part support.
Right.
It's a lot of guys just do the stuff in their home garage. So like with them, we're actually working with a bunch of influencers.
Right.
And we're essentially finding people that already have big Jeep channels and big Jeep pages on either YouTube or Instagram or in some cases Facebook. And we're basically saying, hey, look, we'll hook you up with a deal on parts if you document your install process and show you how you do all this stuff at home.
It's awesome. That's what people want to see, even if
That can relate,
like, oh, I did the same thing, but this guy did it slightly different, and that's cool. So people love to learn, and that's a great way for people to absorb that.
Exactly. That's how I get most of my tech content now. If I'm trying to figure out how to do something, I usually end up just watching a YouTube video.
Right.
That's what I do. I'll fix a faucet. I'll reprogram something, whatever it is.
You guys have that guilt trip like I do afterwards? It's like, man, I watch all these, but I don't ever put any out there. It's like, I need to put more stuff out there, right? And contribute.
I've got this garage door opener that like every once in a while, it just like my clicker forgets the rolling code.
Yeah.
And I'm a slow learner. So every time I forget how to fix it. So I just bookmarked the YouTube from some random guy who just like put up a video and I just bookmarked it. Every time I go back and rewatch and go, oh yeah, that's how I'm supposed to do it. And then I always feel like I feel like I should PayPal that guy like $20. Like I don't know.
People need to set something. My favorite ones before we like cut it off are the I love the home improvement ones because and like they have the most authentic feel. Because they'll be like a plumber smoking a cigarette, but he's telling you how to fix your Kohler faucet, which is like I'm like, how does this even come apart? I have no idea. So he's like, if you break this, you got it. It's very informative. That's the stuff that makes great content right now. It's very informative, very matter of fact, and authentic.
And entertaining.
And sometimes it's just downright entertaining.
Yeah.
So where can and kind of wrapping up here, can you tell us where people can find you and where they can learn more about Kahn Media?
Yeah, so it's Kahn, not the other way. So just go to kahnmedia.com, KAHNMEDIA.com. We've got a website with lots and lots of content. You can find us on Instagram. You can find us on Facebook. You can find us on LinkedIn. One thing we're doing right now, if you're listening to this and you're a small business owner, is we are publishing weekly blog updates with a lot of free white papers and guides on how to kind of keep your small business running during a recession and during the shutdown. A lot of tips on digital marketing, on social marketing. And we're going to keep doing that weekly for as long as we can. So that's just content we're kind of putting out there for people, and hopefully it helps.
Awesome.
So that's great. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for your time. Looking forward to having you back on the podcast again. Stay safe. Have a good weekend. Maybe go drive that boat. Sell us that. No, don't drive the boat. Don't even put it outside.
Boats aren't cool anymore.
No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't keep that boat. I'd probably sell it. You could store something else cool there. Anyway, Dan, thank you so much.
Thanks.
As always.
Thanks, guys.
All
I
right.
appreciate it. It's fun.
Take care.